A very warm welcome and thanks for being with us today. This edition of Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 19th of October 2022. Today we are going to be taking a look at Uganda's energy sector. At 60 years of independence, this discussion is one of those that we are having as a series on looking at the most critical sectors of the economy of the nation as Uganda celebrated or celebrates this year 60 years of self-rule. Today we have the one and only Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa, who is Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, to discuss these matters that concern her sector. And I want to warmly welcome Honorable Ruth to the studio after many people had known you for politics and after you... Leadership. That has not changed. They knew you for politics. Now they know you. Honorable Ruth, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here this evening. I'm happy that I've been able to make it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Next to Honorable Ruth, on her right, is Engineer Maurice Barije. Maurice Barije is the Chief Operations Officer of Nexus Green Limited, an organization that is setting up, or that has already set up, solar irrigation system, an alternative source of power. And he's here in the studio to discuss matters to do with energy and alternative source of power in the country. Maurice, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'm pleased to be here as well.
Good. Next to Maurice is Counsel Munduru Mercy Grace. She is a lawyer and an activist. She is an expert on energy matters. And Munduru, you're most welcome to the show at short notice. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Good. And finally, the gentleman and lady, starting with the gentleman, Honorable Martin Ojara Mapenduzi, MP for Bardege Laibi in Gulu City, a panelist on the show. Welcome back from Zambia. Is it Zambia,
yes,
or Ghana?
Zambia, yes.
Doing parliamentary work. Last week we missed you.
I'm back.
But it's always good to be back home.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Good. And finally, Councillor Sarah Birete, who is Executive Director with the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Good. I want to inform you that if you want to join the discussion, we are going to be streaming live through YouTube and on UBC television. That's on YouTube, and we are also on Twitter through hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. That's on Twitter. And if you want to send in a message or comment, kindly send through 0709 602592. I'll repeat that, 0709 602592. The earlier you send your question or comment, the better, so that we can incorporate it in the discussion that will be flowing or going through here, and we have you as part of that discussion. Let me start with Honorable Ruth. You came last year, was it May, June, to this sector, which was new in a way to you. You're not an engineer. We have been seeing engineer this, engineer Dujanga, engineer the other one, in charge of the sector. Then a lady who is from another field comes and you're doing your work trying to promote the sector, of course with a lot of challenges. How far are we in terms of expanding the power reach and the spread of power in the country? We are talking 60 years now of independence. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Charles. And I want to congratulate everybody for having gained the 60 years of independence. I'm sure none of us here at the panel witnessed the 9th October 1962, but we've been around, we've read, we have shared stories with our parents, and I know that from there we've been able to see that Uganda is moving. And if I can begin by the generation capacity, before independence, we were talking about one hydropower plant, the Owen Falls Dam, at the Owen Falls Dam. And by 1986, we had 100 megawatts as generated capacity. And the per capita consumption then was, I think, 80 kilowatt hour per capita. So Uganda focused on making sure that we have reforms, and making sure that we create energy funds to specifically put money ring-fenced for electricity infrastructure in terms of generation, transmission, and distribution. And I think we have done a great deal in generation, because as I speak now, our installed capacity is 1,378.1 megawatts. And the kilowatt hour per capita is 218 kilowatt hour per capita. That is small compared to what is in the world out there, compared to the average consumption for Africa, which is 518 kilowatt hour per capita. But still, that is small. We want to go up to maybe 1,000. But we are lucky that we don't experience winters, which will require heating up, you know, the houses. And the people of Uganda are just picking up cooking using electricity. But if we mobilize them to use clean energy, that is hydropower, this installed capacity I'm talking about is not enough. But at least we have increased the generation, and we have increased the transmission lines. I think we are talking about 1,166 kilometers of just 132 kV, which has grown up to beyond 3,000 kilometers of 220 kV. We had 11 substations, now we are talking about 29 substations. When you take Gulu Road.
11 at what stage?
In 1986.
1986.
I did not witness much between 62 and 1986. But of course, Uganda was going through a lot, change of leadership, coups, and all that. So we now have 29 substations. Substations are very important. This is where we rest power, if I can use the layman's language. You get power, evacuate power from the generation plant, like from Karuma, for example. You have to rest it at a substation where you have transformers, and then you distribute. If power is transmitted from Karuma, like we have a 400 kV line from Karuma to Kawanda substation, it's a double circuit, which is completed and is energized. From Kawanda substation, then you have to distribute with a 133 kV so that you can step down further to the consumers to do last mile connection. So when you take that route, which I have taken many times since I came in office, I am happy to see that line completed. I am happy to see a transmission line from Kawanda going to Oluyo substation in Nuoya. That Oluyo substation, that line connecting Oluyo substation is also completed and it is energized. So we are expanding the grid now, going towards north. So from Oluyo, we will have a transmission line that will go through Juba to Nimule, because we have to sell power. But it will also go to Nebi substation up to Arua substation. But we also have another arm that feeds into Kole substation along the same road. Kole substation will take power to Gulu, Arua, and then stabilize northern Uganda. I went to Gulu immediately I was appointed, and the Gulu power was blinking all the time, blinking, and I felt bad. And you can imagine, I was at a hotel.
Actually, they call them generator lights. I mean, the disco lights.
Yeah, the
Disco lights are
now, the disco lights are no longer there. We have tried to stabilize. So we are expanding the national grid. Going down south, we also have substations. But as we expand, we have to look back and see and do what we call intensification. When you distribute power lines, by the time you construct those lines, there are a few installations. But before you know it, a maize mill, a hotel, a hospital, which is consuming power. So if you put a transformer which does not take on that capacity, then you hear of transformers bursting and all that. So as we expand, we look back and intensify. You are expanding, but you have to look back and intensify. But we are not only looking at hydropower. We are also doing solar, because we are lucky that we are at the equator and we have the sun. We have the sun almost every day. We have people who have come in to do solar energy. The problem with the solar, it has been expensive. The tariff has been expensive. So out of the 58% consumption or connectivity in the whole country, 19% is on the grid, 38% is off-grid. Off-grid, like the mini grids we have in Norway. And those off-grids power generation is through solar. Solar has been too expensive. It's only now that it is coming down because, of course, about the narrative, clean transition. I am happy to note that we have done research, we have been trained, and as I speak now, we know our capacity of geothermal power. It is clean, and we already have MOUs with a company from Canada which is going to develop geothermal in Kasese. Our capacity for geothermal is 1,500 megawatts. So if we manage to generate geothermal, which is clean, add on the 1,370 plus, then in nuclear energy, we are working with a South African company, Chinese company, and Russian company that are helping us. We've been assessed by the International Atomic Energy Agency. They have come to the country. They have assessed us 2-3 times. We've been upgraded from stage 1 to 2, and they are convinced that we have the required legal frameworks and that protection will be guaranteed.
At what level do we start generating or building the capacity?
Well, first of all,
developing it.
You have to have the staff. We have trained staff. Even with petroleum, oil, and gas, you remember the president had to wait and take the Kalisas back to school to study so that they come back and be the ones to negotiate. Likewise, in the nuclear energy, we have trained. We have the Nuclear Council established and the laws established. We have identified the site. It is in Busoga, Mayuge, and certain site for nuclear energy. They have visited. The International Atomic Energy Agency has visited. So we are being helped to build the nuclear energy because it is clean energy. We are required to do clean energy. And it's for just energy, not, not weapon, not what. And I don't think Uganda wants to go into that. But we just want to use the potential that God gave this country, exploit it sustainably, so that we can talk about clean energy.
Okay.
Then the reforms that we have done, the concessions that you heard about, ESCOM, which is handling Naluvale, the concession was a 20-year concession. It is expiring next year, March 2023. Who is going to take over? Our own company, Uganda Electricity Generation Company. It is the one that is managing Namave thermal power plant. Thermal power plant is just for security purposes. And I am seeing ourselves turning it into using nitrogen or natural gas. Thermal is dirty. It generates 50 megawatts. But now as I speak, it is being managed and run by our own company.
Okay.
So we have a Uganda Electricity Generation Company. We have a Uganda Electricity Transmission Company. We have a Uganda Electricity Distribution Company. All those are companies full of Ugandan engineers. And they are going to be merged to form a Ugandan National Energy Company, which will be negotiating, which will be running our electricity. Remember, we disbanded UEB and we created these companies. Now we are going back because we have gotten the capacity and we are able to manage the generation, transmission, and distribution network in the country.
Okay.
Yes.
I just need to make a follow-up before I bring in your colleagues on the show. Tell us about Karuma. How far? When is it going to be commissioned? We had been told that there were some challenges here and there with the technical finishing and timelines. What's happening to Karuma now?
Karuma generates 600 megawatts. It is now under defect liability period. This is a requirement, or this is a provision in the contract that when you construct such a big plant, you have to watch and see how it behaves in terms of engineering, and that's when you identify defects. The cabling was not done very well. I visited, we quarreled, the cabling is now done, and a few things are remaining. So next month, November or December, we are going to see 2 units from Karuma, that is 200 megawatts, being commissioned. The wet test has been done, and so we are good to go. That means we will be remaining with 400 units. And as we bring on board all these units, we have to make sure that on the side of distribution, we have the network. Because as I speak now, out of 1,378.1 megawatts, at peak, Uganda is using only 800 megawatts. And people are saying, why do you talk? Some people talk about excess. I don't want to call it excess power because it confuses people. You are saying you have excess power, yet in Chiboga we are in darkness. Yes. Okay? So it is excess in quotes because we are not utilizing it. Why are we not utilizing it? It's because we have not constructed the distribution network. Okay. That's why we are looking for money through the electricity access scale-up project to make sure that we connect, we help. There are people with a pole just there, almost at the door, but they are not connected. So this loan, which is in Parliament, and I know that members of Parliament are anxiously waiting to, to pass the loan, because all of us need power in our constituencies.
Thank you.
Will help us to purchase connection materials to the people who applied, and the applications are seated with the supplier, the electricity supplier.
Okay.
To the tune of 200,000 applications.
Applications
Yes,
across the country.
across the country,
Okay.
not served.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will come back to you certainly, but I thought that I needed this background to lay the ground for the other discussions. I am interested in starting with Honorable Mapenduzi. I read quite a bit of discussions on groups, and one of the biggest daily cries of the people of Gulu is always this disco lights being presented by Umeme or different other suppliers. How is it now? Honorable says that has been partly tackled, and there is effort to tackle, you know, the whole challenge. How is it as we stand now? What do you think Honorable Nankabirwa needs to know and to solve this problem?
It's interesting how you would want me to start. I joined active politics at local government level in 2006 and became district council speaker. I was council and all that. The same story, the same cry we had in 2006 in as far as power is concerned in Gulu is the same story we have today.
No change?
No change. No change. Nothing much. And actually, in Gulu, it's already known the time we will have constant power problem.
What time?
I'm sure you follow, just as you put it. Today, there was an interesting discussion where some people think whatever happens in Gulu around this time is deliberate, probably to fail our children. Because every time we have, I'm bringing it, every time we have, every time around October to December, you have serious power problem. Every time from March, when the first rain starts, up to around July, you have serious problem. So you are only likely to experience some kind of consistency for about a month or two. That is the kind of situation we are faced with. So, and you see a disconnect in the stories we hear. Yes, the ministry, the experts give very, interesting figures how we have moved. Yes, it's good. But you see, how does it translate into, why then do we have the same story anyway? So for me, yes, the country has made strides, and just like the Honorable Minister put it, I think the strides has been made majorly in the area of generation. A lot of, these facilities have been, established. So we are generating much more than what we used to generate in the earlier days. But you see, when you look at connectivity, access to power nationally.
Distribution.
Distribution, the aspect of, well, maybe transmission, they also, of late, and I want to comment, it's important to recognize that we have seen a lot of effort being made in enhancing the transmission aspect. That is good.
And the substations.
Exactly. So there are many substations being built. I have visited a few. When I was chairman of Gulu, I took part in the Koro one, I'm sure you know. But in terms of distribution, it's a nightmare. And we have to be honest about it. So, Honorable Minister, this, and what pains is when we repeat the same story, and this is something I have talked about in 26, in 210, and this is 2022. How long does it take to correct? Well, maybe you are not an engineer, as Charles put it, so your approach is likely to be different. And we pray for the best. I wish you the best. But the stories have been the same. It's upside.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I can put it.
That's a good pointer, and I need to first bring out those, and then I will bring in Engineer Barije to also break down for us, the lay people, some of these terms that Honorable has. I like the mastery of some of these technical terms.
I thought I broke it down to my level as a lay person.
No problem, Honorable. You have done well. Honorable, coming to Council Mundoro, West Nile is one other area that has really put Honorable Nankabirwa on the chopping board, and I saw I think they petitioned your office, and led by her, and then they also petitioned Parliament. That those discussions are still going on. I need us to hear from their perspective as well before we come to what should really be the solution, where is the problem, and what is Uganda not doing right, and what should it do. So Council, why there's so much back and forth in terms of even the petitions and all this, that as far as West Nile is concerned, and why are you with your activist team so much on, you know, we need to do this, we need to do the other?
Thank you very much. And I think, as you rightfully put, the Honorable Minister simply jumped in a burning flame. This fire around electricity connectivity for West Nile has been a long journey, and I think she came in when this fight had already begun. This was not the first fight we've had with the powers that be. For several years now, almost every year there's been either an issue raised on the floor of Parliament, or there's a local action by citizens in West Nile around the issue of electricity. And perhaps just to give a quick background, that as we celebrate 60 years of independence, West Nile really celebrates 60 years of darkness. And that is very absurd for a region like West Nile, that is home to the largest number of refugees, and that already has a lot of pressure also on existing public services. And the situation was worse in the early 90s, when we literally used to have about 4 hours of power, and government entered a concession with Wenreko in 2003, and this concession runs for 20 years. And this was meant to really...
That's the Wenreko concession with government.
Exactly. So this was meant to really fix this challenge that West Nile as a region was experiencing at that time. And there was also hope that the Nyagak plant would add some additional capacity and ensure that the region is sufficiently supplied. Unfortunately, this has not worked as we have hoped right from the takeoff. And we've
not helped at all.
Not at all. And
Why
even
not?
as I speak now, I don't think the 3.5 megawatts that was meant to be generated goes beyond 1 megawatt. And Wenreko itself, as the company that was initially solely running and supplying power within West Nile, has demonstrated inefficiency from the onset. And so Electromax as a company was introduced to, try and step up the capacity and stabilize power. And it has been met with the same challenges. Unfortunately, Charles, for West Nile, issues around energy access have forward linkages with public services. There's always a price to pay. And for a region like this, imagine for your entire existence, you've not had any opportunity to develop, but also there are other challenges associated with this. We don't have load shedding as other regions experience. It is actually proper blackouts, because the reasons are always stated. And I can tell you, if right now you went to the Wenreko page, up until this morning, they will give an outage alert, and they will give the reason as fuel shortage. So this is not about load shedding. Last week, there were 2 days of complete power blackout. And over the years, we've lost so many people in hospitals, especially women and children that need health care. And we already know generally public institutions in Uganda are not sufficiently connected to electricity. And these are details that are readily available with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. And our institutions of learning, such as schools, are also the biggest consumers of biomass because that is the only alternative that they have. And so in the past 3 years, the problem has really become worse than it was. It has also escalated other issues around security, insecurity, issues around, challenges, especially for institutions of learning. I think 1 week ago there was a publication where Muni University was said to be spending over 1 million shillings a day to run their generators. A rural referral hospital can no longer afford fuel for the hospital to run. And if you look at our students who have to compete with other students around the country who cannot study beyond 7 p.m. because of power blackouts, it's a big problem. Of course, the minister has given us assurance, and I can say that there's work going on for sure in terms of the national grid. But our biggest issue is the stopgap of the current distribution challenges that we have. The lack of accountability and the sheer manner with which our plea to hold the two companies accountable has been ignored. Because yes, we have to wait until March 2023, which was the assurance we were given by the Ministry of Energy. But at what cost? How many people from West Nile must pay the price for the 5 months? At least if we are waiting for the 5 months and there's stable electricity, affordable and accessible to the communities, because having electricity access is one thing, but is it affordable? We pay very high tariffs, I think more than the other parts of the country. So many people cannot even afford what is there. And I think for a region like West Nile, to this day, not be connected to the national grid has to be a very big question, because a country like Uganda is part of those progressive countries that are aspiring to move towards universal access to energy, which is very important and a determinant for socioeconomic growth. And it's no wonder, if you look at the statistics of poverty in this country, West Nile is the second poorest. And there's no doubt that has everything to do with the lack of opportunities in the region, because now in the 90s we had the distilling companies, we had the Arua foam industry. These industries all had to close and go. And so nobody can set up a very serious factory or industry in West Nile because there's not a sustainable form of energy. And as such, even with the immense opportunities with being a border region that borders both Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, it is very difficult. And I think this year, the citizens said enough. Our leaders have tried, everybody has tried. We're going to now get up and go and demand for what is rightful to us, because we pay taxes and we perhaps contribute very immensely in terms of taxes because of our position. And I think URA has very good statistics with how much revenue they generate from the region, but we cannot be, at the receiving end. And our pleas in our petitions were very clear. First was the accountability question to the two companies that right now have a concession with government, and to find alternatives for the people so that we stabilize electricity, even as we wait for the progress that we've been promised that will materialize in March. And because this problem has continued even after a petition, after a meeting with the State Minister for Energy, the problem of unstable electricity has continued. The citizens felt that they needed to accelerate this advocacy and continue to, seek government's intervention urgently, because it's a crisis. It's not something that I'm just exaggerating. It's actually really a crisis for the people.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mercy. Let me bring in Engineer Morris. So these challenges, Mercy has referred to stopgap measures. The minister has recognized some of the deficits for power needs that we have as a country, and where we are coming from, and that honest admission is important in order to know what needs to be done as a stopgap measure. Are some of these challenges, the current challenges, solvable through solar provision, or solar is inadequate for the kind of demand that the kind of demand. And I will ask actually the minister maybe on how other areas, they have talked about some of their areas, but I have seen complaints, I think from Kisoro as well. At one time I saw a complaint. I've seen some complaint, I think, from people of, is it Kapchorwa or somewhere there? I've been reading in the papers. We need to interrogate and find out how the rest of the countrysides are also doing in terms of access to power. But can solar be a solution in terms of a stopgap to some of these immediate challenges?
The short answer, Charles, is yes.
How much?
Listening to the Honorable Minister, Honorable Mapinduzi, and Council Mercy here, the challenge you have here is that the demand grows much faster than the supply. So no matter what Honorable does with the government to grow the supply, you have demand, the growth of the demand outstripping the growth of the supply. So that's why whatever the government has done in terms of generation, Honorable Mapinduzi appreciates it, but it still doesn't solve the problem. Because if the growth of Gulu as a city had been 10 years ago, the problem wouldn't be there. It's just that it keeps growing because you have more people requiring power, you have more schools being built, more hospitals coming up, and so it's almost like it's playing catch up from a production side. How does solar address this stopgap? Because it's free. And because free in terms of the fact that Uganda is one of the few countries in the world, there are not very many, that can actually boast of being able to receive 7 hours of sunlight for more than 75% of the year. There are very few countries that do this. So that's why for us, that's why I said yes. Now, the thing is now, how do you make sure that that free resource which you can have for 7 hours, you are able to harvest it and use it and address this gap that you have in the demand?
How are you guys doing it? You should also share with us
so I'm coming to that.
As Nexus is doing, Nexus Energy Solar is doing to, turn this ideas
to address
into the reality, yes.
Yeah, so I was just coming to that. So Nexus Green is a British company, but we've been here since just 2016, towards the end of 2016. So just slightly under 7 years, right? Now, there was a stigma about solar at the beginning because of the quality. Because people, you just go to a shop and buy a solar panel and you take it home. If something happens, where do you take it? What happens to it? Now what Nexus Green has done has said, look, we come in and guarantee one thing, we guarantee the quality. So we came in, and our first project, which was sort of a trial project from government to say, let's see what you can do, was the Kololo Ceremonial Grounds, for example. We put 0.5 megawatt there at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds. And we tried out different things, because solar is something that is a technology that is fairly new for all intents and purposes. It's the things right now we are at the good place, because most of the trial and error has been done. You have better batteries, so you have better storage. The technology in the solar panels has increased, so you have better efficiency. You can harvest the sun better. Believe it or not, before you put out a solar panel, you can only get 5% of the sun. So that's been the challenge. But now the quality of the product has improved. So what do we say? We say, look, let's put in place quality. And we are glad that government recognized that, okay, through the trials and trying out different things, we've sort of tried to beat this particular stigma about solar. And because, the 0.5 megawatt is there in Kololo, it is working. And now we're partnering with Ministry of Energy to try and say, okay, how do we make sure that solar becomes the go-to renewable energy solution, right? At the same time, we began a project with Ministry of Water, which you talked about, where we are improving agriculture and I mean, as you know very well, almost 70% of this country depends on agriculture. But how do you actually ensure that this changes from subsistence to commercial agriculture? By ensuring that you have water all year round, because with global, with climate change, the season of the rains change. We do not know when to plant anymore. My grandmother, where I come from in Chema, she says, look, do I put the beans in March now, or what happens? So it's a challenge. But just imagine she had water. We have a farmer we've spoken to some farmers. There's a farmer in Bukedi, and then there's a farmer in Mukono. They're saying, look, now for me, I don't care. I can plant from January to December. Because the solution is that you provided the solution using solar to be able to get water and irrigate. So that's what we are trying to do. And then to address that part of quality is to ensure that, it's been in the news, but just to confirm that in Q1 of next year, we'll have the first solar panel manufacturing plant in this country, starting with a production of about 160,000 panels per year, right? This is something that we made a commitment to government when we came to Uganda, and this is going to become a reality. What that means is that I can go, Honorable Mapenduzi can go and buy a solar panel, and if it doesn't work, knows where to go and get a replacement and hold someone accountable. And this will be tier one. So the thing is that when you make the products accessible, when you make the products and solution, cost effective, it will be taken up. It will address this stopgap measure. Because as government builds up all this generation capacity, remember that Honorable talked about the scale-up project. Now they have to look for money, now start building the transmission. What about all these other people who are still waiting? Do they have to wait? No, they can actually go into solar. And what was stopping them before is, one, the cost of the products was high, and then the quality was not there. But if those things are assured,
if you can do irrigation,
yes,
and the people of Gulu, Honorable, sorry, but I keep liking
Please go ahead.
I like their reference to Discolite.
It's indeed.
I laughed when it first came up on one of the groups. They were having discussions about power outages, and it really was a good way of analogizing the whole problem. If they can have that problem, and there is a team that can partner with you as government and say, in the meantime, as you wait for, is it Oluyo, and to generate enough power for the people of either Gulu or Kisoro or West Nile, and that there is a team that can produce actually power enough to, generate power to help the people of that area, whatever area it can be. Is it a possibility that government can partner with you, and that that capacity can be, developed faster? And the time frame is what Mercy, I guess, is complaining about. That what do we do in the meantime? Must we go hungry? Must we stop production? Must we stop the factories from running?
I mean, yes. And the fact is that we're already partnering with government in terms of how do we introduce, because the Kololo one was the first partner with the government. The others
was that a trial, Kololo?
That was a trial. We would call it a trial, 0.5 megawatt trial, to see what's the balance between having an off-grid but hybrid solution. As you work out the differences in cost and try, because you have to find that sweet spot whereby the investment is worth the juice that you pick out, right? And so we're already partnering with the Ministry of Energy. Actually, we've signed an MOU to try and introduce net metering.
What is net metering?
So
and I'm not really asking these questions for myself.
No,
I can go to University of Google, but there is someone out there listening.
Yes. And net metering, by the way, is not an engineering concept. No.
What is it?
It's
science.
It's an economic concept.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Charles, you are here today, or you spend most of the day. You are at Mistill with the youth, fighting over all sorts of things. Now just imagine you had solar panels at your house, right? You're not there, you know, Linda is not there, and you know, the family is not there. The solar panels are actually producing power. This power is there, it's not being used, it's being generated, and you are away. So you're not using it. At night, probably you don't have enough batteries, so you have to use Umeme, you have to use Honorable Nanka Abra's power. But just imagine that power that you use during the day, that you produced as Charles.
Solar is her power.
Yeah, no. Solar is God's power. and when Nexus Green has the factory, Charles will be able to buy the panel from Nexus Green and put it there in his house. So just imagine that power that you're producing during the day, you could actually sell it back to the grid. And then at the end of the month, you come and sit down with Honorable Nanka and say, when I was away at Mestil, I gave you this amount of power. Then she says, but we were in the studio, I was giving you this amount of power. Then as the Baganda say, that's net metering. You see how much you've sold her, how much she's given you, you balance it out. But all that has got to have the right legal framework, you've got to put in. So those are things that they're trying to do. The legal framework is done, fantastic. It's done now? Yeah. So the thing is that, I mean, these are the kind of things that we're trying to partner with government, and they're trying to address this gap that Mercy is talking about. How quickly do we move and address the issue of, if we don't have the distribution yet, how quickly can we move and do this kind of thing?
How quickly is a major problem?
I talked about the legal reforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, probably if you have time, you will unpack it for us. I know it could be, they could be too broad. But Sarah, bringing you on, Maurice introduces the issue of how quickly, which is an intersection with also the argument of Mercy. Is that a question that can be really answered very fast? That how quickly? Do you have, you know, optimism that that is where we need to put our, you know, where really our mouth lies? Is that something that can be done immediately? Do you trust that to be done?
Well, Charles, I happen to be a consumer for both solar and the hydroelectricity.
You've gone ahead of us.
Energy mix. Energy mix.
So I will share that consumer perspective on both. But broadly, when you look at the energy sector in Uganda, the largest thrust of primary consumption is on biomass. And unfortunately, with the climate change, so we are looking at the level of depletion of forests and forest cover in the country. We are looking at biodiversity issues. We are looking at how to preserve or sustainably use the environment. And so the need for climate adaptation brings in now solar and other renewable energy measures really in good context. Because if you look at the people that use firewood in this country, 70% and above are still stuck in using firewood. We all know the source of firewood. Then you have another 6% using charcoal. So you have, actually here the data I have for 2021 is 78% firewood, 5.6% charcoal, so that's already 80%. People destroying the environment on a daily basis. And we know the reason why. All the sources of energy we have in this country are expensive. The program for rural electrification faced challenges because of affordability. When you move across the country, you can see poles. There's a good coverage of poles, although it's not sufficient. But you wait for wires connecting from the poles. In some places, there's none. So if you have power that you produce, and the Honorable Minister talked about the distribution challenges, which I thought also really as Parliament and other decision makers, they need help. Because the plan for generation of electricity should have a plan for distribution. You don't produce power, you can't distribute. I know people are looking into the costs for Bujagari Dam. and the money that the taxpayer pays. Because I think if we generate power, it's good progress. But the plan should be comprehensive. As you generate power, you generate it for what? And then as you distribute power, what is the affordability? From COVID, the UBC data showed that we had, before COVID, we had 22% Ugandans on the national grid. Immediately after COVID, I'm sure maybe people have gone back. We had gone back to 19. We had lost the 3% because of affordability. But I'm sure now people, as much as we have the external forces destabilizing the economy, maybe, I don't know the latest data now. So to me, this is something we must discuss as a country. We are still in a sort of enclave energy economy with the people stuck to firewood, people stuck to bushes, in order to have power, a source of power in their homes. How do we deal with that? So when you got solar, the biggest disservice with solar, with all the beautiful benefits it offers, is the initial cost. And it's good we have somebody from the sector directly. How can we, together with the government, how can we bring down the initial cost of solar, which is prohibitive to many people? Or maybe stagger it so that people are able to pay in installments. Because as much as it creates a lot of advantages, how many people can afford it? And then I don't know what innovations have happened in the sector for saving energy longer than, because normally it tends to have those challenges of your own, then the energy is lost at some point. So what innovations have happened in the sector? I think that would be good information for the viewers out there.
Good. Honorable, you have a lot to respond to. We still have some time even before the break.
Okay.
But the question that seemed to bother your colleagues, Mercy and the Honorable most, is how the stopgap measure. And given the petition that is before Parliament, that was brought to government, how do you think, what do you think they should be doing, these regions that are complaining, between now and March, for example? And March can also have its own problems, because
September already did.
September already did. There was a first deadline.
There was a first deadline.
Maybe Charles, before.
There are other issues that affect your performance other than your own internal dynamics.
Maybe Charles, before the Honorable Minister comes in.
Yes.
Talking about March, I have never seen a project in this country where when you say it's going to be done within this period, it's executed exactly within that period. I have never seen any project. And so even when you say, you tell the people of West Nile that by March you will have this, Charles, if this happens, I'll go to my farm and give you a goat. Actually, the biggest.
Which type of goat?
Goat.
Not the local type.
Well, I would love to give you. The biggest. I'm not sure whether it's local or, but you will have it. No, you see, this because we are, it's
I'm
about.
not going to take a cow from north. Okay. You know, a cow from north is a small cow.
It's about
maybe from Ankole type.
It's a big goat.
Yeah, I'll seriously give it.
Our cows look like big goats.
Of course, Honorable Mapinduzi knows that factors don't remain constant. For example, I went with vigor to make sure that Nyagak 3 comes on board at least by October.
This year. Where we are in.
Yes. But I wanted money for the contractor to fly in the turbines. The dam is finished, the pipe is done. The good thing is that I am always on the ground. I know how Nyagak looks like. I've gone there like 3 times. But this quarter, I'm given 3 billion for Nyagak instead of 9. So all factors don't remain constant. Then when COVID came in, there was great demobilization of workers. We abandoned. Thirdly, access, right of way. Somebody just refuses to be paid by government. And you negotiate because you want to take the line. So, but we endeavor to make sure that we deliver. And secondly, again to my colleague, is that for me, I'm an action person. If he still believes that the story will remain the same, when you are looking at the infrastructure, what does it mean to have a substation at Kole? To have a transmission line completed? To have a substation constructed in Nebi? What does it mean to council? Nebi, Arua, that means we are bringing power to this substation for onward distribution. So the signs are glaring that we are moving towards West Nile, that we are, if we evacuated power from Achua and Duawe with the dimmed energy, where the dam is completed but the evacuation line is not completed. Those are mistakes that have been done, which I'm making sure that now that I'm merging the three companies, I will not accept this isolated, planning. So I just want to call upon my colleague to have hope. I know that when Karuma comes on board, we have to evacuate this power. And the infrastructure is on the ground. For the stopgap measures you are talking about, is that first of all, like Council explained, Nyagak 1 did not perform as expected. When I visited, only one unit was generating power. And it took long for the second unit to come back on live. And then the Electromax. With the cost of fuel now, even if you squeezed me so that Uganda National Oil Company maybe puts in money of fuel, the company itself is a young company. It needs capitalization. But we will not lament, except that the projects in my ministry take long. For example, we are going to develop a 20 megawatt solar plant in Utuka, still West Nile. That should have been a stopgap measure, but how quickly? The negotiations take time, the feasibility studies take time, a lot of consultations, and if you don't do that, then the world will jump on you. Civil society, you have not paid well.
Yes, you have not done environmental
compensation. We have to follow all that. How long does an environmental and social impact assessment plan, how long does it take?
How about the electricity fund?
It is not electricity fund. This one, which I have just reinstated in the new bill, there is zero.
No money on it.
No, it is this budget which is going to put in money. You've just supported me on this bill. We did not have it. Okay? Then she asked about why do you generate power which you know you are not going to consume? Do you know how long it takes for you to construct a hydropower plant? 10 years on average. So it's better you plan for March generation because the transmission line does not take 10 years.
No, Honorable, my question was, why don't you have a comprehensive plan that as you finish generating power, then you have means to distribute?
The few lines which have stalled, which made us not to evacuate power quickly, the reason is, like a case in Tororo, access the right of way. You know what the lawyers are doing? They go down and mobilize the people to refuse the money that has been you know, earmarked
For
from
compensation.
the government, chief government valuer.
For compensation?
Yes. I went to Tororo and people told
Because
me.
normally it's lower than market rate.
People normally, no, not that. This is Mulio. Some lawyers put in their fees and said, don't accept. They put in their fees until people say, give us the money. They put in their fees. It happened in Tororo. So you thought that you are going to access because somebody has the right to go to court. Do you remember the amendment to the Constitution? It was amendment number 1, which was going to amend a certain provision to allow government
Article 26.
Compulsory acquisition. Government does not have any problem with that, but it is the halting of the project, which project is facilitated by taxpayers' money. So that amendment was going to allow government.
That was to the Land Acquisition Act.
To allow government do the project. You have gone to court. Court will listen to you, will make a ruling. If it requires more money, government gives you the money, but the project has
to continue.
But Honorable, I know that the civil society stand was against that.
Yes.
Imagine somebody's house is in that access way, and they need to shift, relocate, but you have not agreed on the money. They are in court, so they give way and go away.
No, it cannot be that you are not going to pay a coin. It is the amount. If it is 50 millions, and we are saying, you know, the valuation is 30. So we say get the 30, okay? Not 0, no, get the 30 that has been calculated by the government valuer. Let me do your project because you are part and parcel. Then from court, according to the court's ruling, if court says, you have to top up, then government tops up.
But the project has gone on.
The project has gone because the right for compulsory acquisition is given. Court cannot rule that don't compulsorily acquire. No, that will be unconstitutional.
But
Court will rule on the amount.
With the prior and adequate
Court will, yeah, that is where we are. So when you say, why do you generate, then the transmission is not there, those are the challenges.
Okay.
Those are the challenges.
Okay, Honorable, let me just ask you to freeze it there. We need to listen a bit more to some of those challenges and see where is really the point that we must touch in order for the solutions to come in. But let's go for a break right now, and then when we come in, we will be continuing with the discussion, discussing the energy sector and 60 years after since independence. Where are we as a country? Where do we stand? And are we doing better? What must we do better? Let's go for the break now.
MTN joins the people of Keralur to celebrate the 12th coronation anniversary of the King of Keralur, His Royal Majesty Umeme Philip Raoni III in October. At MTN, we believe that we only succeed if the communities in which we operate succeed. And so, we're happy to join the people and well-wishers of the people of Keralur in promoting social cultural programs of the Umeme.
Walego Mugisa ni Ubimu ku Keralur.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello? Hello?
This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions, and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number, and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it? Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera, refrain from unnecessary engagements with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
The Ministry of Health informs the public that there are confirmed cases of Ebola in Uganda. We, however, urge the public not to panic as the situation is being managed. The Ministry of Health further reminds the public to be on the lookout for any persons who may show signs and symptoms of Ebola. These include high body temperature, abdominal pains, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding from the body openings such as the nose, eyes, and mouth. Please inform the nearest health worker immediately if you see anyone with these signs and symptoms. To prevent Ebola from spreading further, please take the following preventive measures: regular washing of hands with water and soap, avoid handshaking and hugging, avoiding any contact with any suspected Ebola patients. Any person who dies suddenly should not be buried but reported to the nearest health worker or LC1 immediately. For further information, please call the Ministry of Health toll-free number on 0800-100-066 or send a free SMS to your report on 8500. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF and World Health Organization.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone, the most affordable smartphone in Uganda. You get to enjoy free 1 GB for 1 whole year. My Airtel 4G smartphone, your best value for money. Visit the nearest Airtel outlet today and get one at only 250,000 Uganda shillings. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Do you need data collection services, data analysis and reporting, monitoring and evaluation systems? Then contact Mold Technologies, a professional research firm that has provided many organizations with timely research solutions for over 15 years. For more information, visit www.mt.co.ug or call us on 0704 913 399 or 0782 602 963. Visit our office in Kampala at Sayuni Complex in Tinda. Mold Technologies, your professional research firm.
Did you know that a cashless, secure, and convenient lifestyle is possible with Airtel Money Pay? Pay for your goods and services in the following simple steps. Dial *185*9#. Enter the merchant ID. Enter the amount. Enter payment reference, for example, school items. Please enter PIN to confirm. You will receive a confirmation message for a successful transaction. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Welcome back from the break, and this is behind the headlines this Wednesday, the 19th of October 2022, and we are looking at the energy sector and looking at how it is performing. We have the Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa, the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, in the studio, leading us through the discussion. And before we went for the break, she had started taking us through some of the challenges that are pertaining in the sector with a view to finding solutions. We have, alongside the Minister, we have the engineer Maurice Barije, who is from an organization that is rolling out solar for different uses, especially starting with irrigation, and that's Nexus Green Limited. We also have Council Mercy Mundoro, who is leading a team of petitioners, and they have petitioned Parliament and the Ministry of Energy on the rampant power outages and the absence of power in the West Nile region. And we have the Honorable Martin and Councillor Sarah, who are the panelists on this show. Honorable Minister, you had started rolling out some of the challenges. Can I add an interrogation question on whether or not the what do they call it? The lumping, for lack of a better word, you know, merging the unbundling distribution, transmission, and generation. Then there is an animal inside there that was introduced with that unbundling of those three, Umeme, which has become another song on our lips in this country. And it brings in the question of load shedding. What is going to be the solution as far as Umeme is concerned? Yes, you're going to merge the three, and we pray that it will improve on effectiveness and efficiency. How about Umeme issue? Will it reduce the problem that we have as of now?
Thank you very much. Uganda has been moving cautiously because we don't want to experience what Cape Town, South Africa is experiencing right now. Power outage there is terrible. That's why sometimes we are not understood. Here I am with money. I want to generate 100 megawatts of solar. Why are you not allowing us? We don't want to have a shock on the grid. We say give us 10, then 20 as we absorb. So the unbundling of UEB, which was done in 2001, was in the right direction. It created the three companies, UEGCL, DCL, and TCL. We also had a concession signed with the Umeme to do, to supply basically in urban areas. And the distribution company is been in charge of the wider network, almost 90%. Now with that capacity, we are coming together. We want efficiency, such that instead of having 3 boards, we are going to have 1 board and these distinctive units. So what will happen to Umeme then? First of all, we are still with Umeme until 2025 March, whether you like it or not. This is the concession that was agreed on 20 years. And therefore, I am very careful when I'm talking about Umeme. Umeme is owned by you. NSSF is the majority shareholder by 23%, and other people. It is owned by Ugandans. They have tried to do work within their means, because as government, we owe them money. When a transformer bursts, a colleague calls me, I'm in darkness for 2 days, I call Celestino.
The MD.
The MD. Give me 4 hours, and the man installs the transformer. So if it was government, you have to write, and they tell you, in the next quarter, we are going to give you money.
Then procurement.
Then we will procure. Then, so when people are complaining about Umeme, they should remember that with the way the concession was designed, Umeme was allowed to invest promptly. Otherwise, you can go back to total darkness, because you know how we work. Government requisition, appropriation from Parliament, what do we call it? Supplementary. And then is it unforeseen or avoidable? You know?
Can it be postponed, the problem?
So, we are preparing to see a natural retirement of Umeme concession.
But just if I may,
Honourable Minister, just and colleagues on the show, this segment, the second segment, usually I encourage free interaction,
it's okay.
So that just feel free with decorum and respect, of course. Feel free to interrupt where possible. And your colleague allows. Sarah, you wanted
Yes,
to...
I wanted to ask the Honourable Minister related to the Umeme, of course, and the usage of power. Research shows that only 24% of Ugandans connected to the national grid are able to consume power for more than 4 hours. I don't know has anybody bothered to find out why and what happens to the other hours? What do people use? Because majority
first of all, we don't suffer load shedding.
We do.
We suffer outages.
Okay.
There is a difference.
Maybe the name, okay. That's
there
technical.
Is a difference.
Okay.
There is a difference.
Lack of power. Then
That's a good one.
Yes.
No, load shedding is terrible.
Of power.
You are trying to apportion the few resources you have. You be in darkness deliberately. The outages come either due to system failure, because some of the systems need upgrading. The poles are old. They have fallen down because it has rained so much. There are so many reasons why one place can go into darkness. But I will cross-check with that research. I had not...
it's by the energy organization.
Because where we are not suffering, you know, load shedding, people must be accessing power at least 80%, not 24%. What I know is that there are areas which are not yet connected, and we have suffered vandalism because the wires are free, they are not energized. You mentioned it, and I thought I should explain. And that is where I'm beginning from. The moment I get money, all those dormant projects where we have poles erected, there are no wires. Where we have wires, no energy. Where we have energized, no connection. That's where I'm going to begin from. Again, there was that push over connectivity. Because where there is some peace, people want to do business. I have my maize mill. I have my everywhere, from Karamoja to Chisoro, from Tororo to Hoima. So some people got that lobbying technique where, you know, a commissioner or Nankabir, where you say, at least throw for me some lines. Throw only 5 poles, please, out of the scope. I have realized some of those projects are outside the scope. So I have to rescope so that I can be able to buy the connection materials. So you were wondering why we have that. So when you interjected, I was explaining about Umeme concession, that we have to allow a natural retirement, but we have to be ready as government to make sure that the buyout amount is ready. Otherwise,
how much is
the concession allows Umeme to continue. You're supposed to pay them the amount.
Do you have an idea of how much it is?
I have an idea of a projection, and I have requested that in every budget, at least they put some amount, so that
a kind of a fund,
so that at the end of the concession, I am remaining with a small figure. Okay, so I am calling upon Honorable Mapinduzi. This I've told you, so you have to look at the budget and say, where is this money for Umeme? If I can get like 50 million US dollars every year, yes, it is about 217.
217 that we have to use to buy out Umeme.
Yes.
To retire them.
Yes.
Naturally. And I think
at the end of 2025, they invest. I've told you how they invest, and they are regulated by the Electricity Regulatory Authority. And our authority has been rated the best in Africa for 4 consecutive times.
When they are making money here, they're doing business, where does that money go?
I want to call upon you to read the concession, to read that contract, what it said.
Again.
Their return on investment is 20%, very high.
Yes, that's true.
And by the way, it touches why the electricity is
the tariffs are high.
The tariffs are high.
Why the tariffs are high.
And speaking about concessions, I think I really wanted to go back to the question I raised earlier. For example,
Wanareko.
Both Wanareko and Electromax, because the question of efficiency and also accountability, because with distribution, where there is inefficiency, for us, we see that there are gray lines when it comes to how do these companies account to the consumer, especially where they're being inefficient. And I think for us in West Nile who have had a very long experience with these companies, because we have a 20-year concession, that has been where the frustration comes from, because you have no mechanism to hold them accountable. And even while leading this advocacy, we've tried our very best to keep away from taking the law into our hands, because that would be an option when citizens feel unheard. We have had to keep that away and pursue the more civil means of finding an alternative to these inefficiencies, because it almost feels like there are powers behind these companies that prevent them from being held accountable, even when they're being inefficient, and it is out there for the world to see. And so it gets really frustrating for a consumer who is paying very high tariffs, and yet you do not even get to enjoy. And then there's a price to pay always, you know, because these are realities that touch people's everyday life. And I know a recent story where a woman died during an operation. And a blackout happened, as it usually does, and she passed on. And I remember how chaotic that was. And so you don't have answers to families like that. Even when we've been saying, oh, we have, you know, the March timeline coming finally, and we're excited. And people, and these families and people who have lost their livelihoods, who struggle every day, are asking you the question, what do we do until then? What are the alternatives that we've been given, that maybe there are some measures that are being put in place, or there's at least a mechanism to recognize that there's an inefficiency here, and this is how we plan to handle it. In the absence of that, we really feel that are these deliberate, like Honorable Mapinduzi said. And many times I think we've had very tough conversations and felt marginalized and left alone, because that aspect of our livelihood is always avoided. When it comes to the reassurances about the national grid, you really see the progress, you can see that work is going on, and you can really match the words to the action. And so you have the comfort that this is actually going on. But when it comes to the concession, it's like it's untouchable. So I would want, really, I know the West Nilers who are following this show, because this is an issue of importance to everybody.
The concession?
Yes, the Wanareko one, yes.
So you would be able to appreciate that Wanareko acts upon the demand. Wanareko and Electromax, if you don't call the demand, Wanareko will not generate. I was in between Wanareko and Electromax. They were ping pong.
Until
on the
now
ground.
They do, yes.
So there is a problem. Before you castigate Wanareko, you have to read the concession clearly. Wanareko was supposed to generate from Nyagak because hydropower is cheap, cheaper than the power from diesel.
And with the cost of fuel now.
Yeah. So if somebody is interested in burning more fuel to get this power from dirty source, yet there is a cheaper power there, and on a record saying no demand has been placed. I didn't want to discuss these two because I am following it up. I'm following it up, but because you're a lawyer, I would interest you to critically read the provisions
in the concession. Honorable, I have a follow-up question on the agreement. I know that on several occasions we see ministers in Parliament saying, I signed without reading.
Not it happened once.
No, I'm coming.
It is not.
Let me first build the point.
You are building it badly.
No,
it has a bad foundation. Make a good foundation, please.
Let me point out the examples. The first one was the former Minister of Energy, Honorable Saida Bumba. She said, I signed without
Talk about the current,
No,
please.
I'm coming. Then Honorable Matia Kasaija also said it. So that's the background.
I also heard that
yes. So it's not that I'm...
I also heard that one.
So, but away from that, so I know that Parliament is on record for having recommended the cancellation of Umeme. And the basis was that Ugandans got a road deal. And it was a unanimous, almost a unanimous decision. Above 80% of MPs felt like that, and then Cabinet said it's difficult to pull out. So, so the point I'm making is, do you think that Ugandans get value for money in these contracts? Because I know you have been in government for quite a long time and at senior cabinet levels.
It hurts to see that sometimes we get road deals and you wonder what people were up to. That's a fact. And with this Umeme concession, first of all, the return on investment was high, 20%. It has a bearing on the end user tariff. And the yearning of majority of the people to divorce, from Umeme, is true, but it is costly. Divorce with the lump sum for buyout, because it is all in the concession. If you want a divorce, this is what you have to pay. You have to pay me even the interest I would be making in the remaining period. It's like mortgaging the country. It's like mortgaging the country. And these days, contracts are read, and the Attorney General, Chiwanuka Chiriowa, wrote to the President, identified those, provisions which they put in contracts, mortgaging the country, attaching Bank of Uganda, and sometimes people just sign because these are our friends. Of course, they cannot attach, but you never know. So all that has been pulled out, and that's how I am ending up these days having a problem on one of the projects I will not mention. The project that was going to see me construct substations quickly. I've gone back to square one because of those provisions. We agreed, the President said no, even if we are dealing with the friendly, but we cannot mortgage the country. So I've gone back to square one. So yes, what you are saying is true, and it's a pity. It's being done by our own people. And these projects are negotiated. People sometimes fly out to go and negotiate. Sometimes they negotiate from inside the country. But we need to be alert. We need to be alert. So.
But how alert can you be when they are supposed to advise you on the legal documents and you are trusting because they are professionals? That's the challenge. But just hold on.
May I read?
I know.
I am a former member of the Constituent Assembly that promulgated the 1995 Constitution.
Yes.
I did not sit there for nothing. And I was on the Committee of Legal, chaired by the late Murenga.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm interested. I'm a lawyer by association.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. I need us to, Honorable Mapinduzi, I'm coming back to start with you. Okay. But I have questions and comments, and I need to bring them on at this time. John Abaho, starting with him, from Chengera, says the Ugandan energy policy of 2002 aimed to increase rural electrification from 16% to over 60%, which hasn't been achieved. Can the Honorable Minister explain to us how rural electrification can be achieved for enhanced rural development? I think that's what he meant. Then there is Mambo Koboki. I wish to inquire from the Minister on the status of West Nile connection to the national grid. How far is West Nile compared to DRC and South Sudan, where the government is exporting our electricity at cheaper price than we Ugandans? Thank you, Mambo. And then Sam from Kampala says, I like the Minister's good grasp of the energy situation of the country. Honorable, you have a kudos there.
Survival.
And they're saying, and Sam is saying, well done.
Oh,
but I noticed that she subscribes to the notion that everything in Uganda begins in 1986.
That's what I understand.
Secondly, the minister's geography of Uganda seems sketchy. I don't know why Sam is saying that, and but because you had mentioned areas you had been to, maybe he will need to explain. And then Nelson Odama says, why can't Nexus and the Ministry of Energy come to Pakwach district, especially at a place called Alui, and build a solar field for West Nile? Why does it take, what does it take to do this? My minister. That's Nelson. Richard from Nebi, I think the people of West Nile are today just on this, on UBC because of the discussion on power, which is good, thanks. Richard from Nebi says, as my sister said, we the West Nile, we didn't celebrate 60 years of independence, but the darkness. And let me ask Minister for Energy, is West Nile region not part of Uganda? I think that's what he meant. And then Richard Tabu from Busia says, the hilarious part of this electricity issue is that surely we are being cheated more than enough for the amount we pay for power. And our leaders pretend like they don't know what's happening. Thank you, Richard, for expressing your thoughts. Ojuluna Peter from Entebbe says, it is sad to hear we have unused power of over 400 megawatts, but the few people who are using power, the power regulator has decided to punish them by increasing the tariffs. Michael Gerald, a student of KIU, says, truth be said, power is constant in only central region, but rural areas are facing power irregularities. Yet, they are being exploited. Next, Ashraf from PG says, my question is to Honorable, where does Umeme fit in the merger equation as highlighted by the minister? And when will the merger into Uganda National Energy Company take shape? The first part you had already explained. The second part, Honorable Minister, you can explain when, but you had also explained it. You said you're looking at 225 with some conditions. Kaziba Yusuf from Makindye says, to Honorable Nankabirwa and Morris, what is the difference between renewable and hydropower in terms of cost per unit? I'll throw that at Morris to respond to after Honorable Mapinduzi. And then Francis from Fort Portal says, I applied for power connection in 2018, but up to now, Umeme is saying government has no money, meters just wait and not alone. We are a big list. For people who can afford shillings 900,000 are being connected. Peasants are neglected. That's Francis from Fort Portal. And then Alex Azavo says, I believe by government removing all taxes on solar components will help to reduce the price of the end users. Remember, most of the solar companies import the products from outside the country. Maurice, you can also respond to that question of Alex, importation of solar, making it expensive, the cost of solar, but after Mapinduzi. Finally, producer, kindly give me the final one. We have too many of them. We need to just sample these ones. Benjamin Mutamboka from Kanungu says, in Kanungu, every time it rains, power automatically goes off. How long does it take for court to pronounce itself on a case in this country? I don't know what it means there. Honorable Mapinduzi, very fast.
Thank you, Charles.
You wanted to raise some issue, and then I will bring in Maurice to start, and then we come again.
Two quick issues. Yeah. The Honorable Minister brings in lots of technicalities in trying to explain why we are having this, but I think there are a number of things that have continued to happen that could have been avoided if two things had happened. One, if government had picked a lot of interest in prioritizing and dealing with some of this. When you look at the situation, especially in Gulu and neighboring districts, the challenges are not that complicated. These are things to do with infrastructures that are old, poles that keep on falling, and so the question would have been, how long would it take to replace these poles? This does not need 10 years to have the poles that are replaced. The other thing is probably poor planning, because the minister talks about building a power plant and the process of creating the transmission line and all that. I'll give you this example. In 2019, I think 2018, 2019, the former minister, state minister for energy, I think Honorable Dujanga, came to Gulu and said, you know, by 15th of December, the areas of Gulu and neighboring districts will start using power from Aswa. So that was the statement. And then later on we are told, you know, the moment a power plant like Aswa begins to generate power and the transmission line is not yet complete,
you pay.
Government has to pay.
That's dimmed energy.
Exactly, dim energy. So that has a lot to do with how we plan. Now you are generating power, but because the transmission line is not complete, the substation is not complete, and connectivity is not done, you have to pay a lot of money for the power being generated but not consumed. And then we also need money for connection, and so these are things that I'm encouraged, Honorable Minister. The spirit you bring in is new. I'm happy that you are not an engineer, because I think the engineers have been too technical that sometimes they want to think too much and then they come with excuses. So you are not an engineer, and be that way and let things move. Otherwise,
neither am I engineer Kamuf.
Yeah, so I would want us to see proper planning being done, but also prioritizing. These are things that can be addressed. Yes, there are many issues that we have to deal with, but how do we build a station, generate power, and not being able to use it for years, and we have to pay a lot of money? It's painful. Okay. So the citizens are being punished, not only twice. There are people who are dying in hospitals because they don't access, there is no power, but also taxpayers' money has to flow every year. So these are things that have to be addressed.
You can also tell us what the problem is on the transmission line, which is supposed to evacuate power from Achwa, since you're underground.
Well, I need to hear more from you, because some of those information I do not know.
Same story, access.
Honorable Minister, the Aswa line, well, the only information I have got is that there is a problem between two institutions of government. That is Nagrik and Uganda Livestock Industries.
Access
They're also struggling who should be compensated.
Access is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Me, I want access.
So government organizations are refusing for government to take over land.
Yeah, I'm told even schools. So we need
government schools or private?
But from the community aspect, I think a lot of work had been done. I took part in a lot of these community meetings. Yes. So I need to hear more about that.
Okay. Honorable, I'll come to you after Maurice. Maurice, there are questions that were asked of you.
Yes.
In terms of costs and what can be done to reduce the cost of accessing solar facilities.
Is when you're producing power and you're actually not using it. That sort of tends to push up your cost. And that's why you see in some areas the cost of the hydro is high. You're paying, you know, in terms of US dollar, 17 US cent. That's about what? In some cases, 1,000 shillings per unit. From a solar perspective, again, you have to think how much am I producing vis-a-vis the demand, and what am I going to store it or not? But I can tell you that in some of our projects we've been able to, you know, to generate solar as low as, you know, 500 shillings per unit, and it can go lower depending on what you want to do with the solar. One of the things that I need to advise the viewers is that with solar, it is very, very important that whoever wants to give you a solar solution, and that's what we do, I don't come and tell you this is what I'm going to sell you. I'm going to give you a product. I need to understand your needs. I need to understand how you're going to use the power. I need to understand how many hours of the day are you going to use it. Is it at night? Is it during the day? Then I give you a solution for that. That's when it becomes cost effective. Otherwise, if I just come and tell you I'm going to give you, you know, 20 solar panels and, you know, 5 batteries, it doesn't make sense. And that's where people end up buying these things and then they say it doesn't work. So we need to be able to have a more professional approach in terms of, am I providing a solution for the need of the particular person? That's a person, that's an individual. And again, my friend from Alui in Pakwach also asked, you know, so we need to sort of understand. The other issue was about the importation of solar, and that's why I mentioned earlier about the establishment of the solar panel manufacturing plant in Uganda. Because what happens is that apart from, you know, government promoting the boo-boo concept, you know, it's buy Uganda, build Uganda, right? So you're going to create jobs, you're going to create improved technology, and you have these things here. And what you will be importing is just glass and probably silicon. The other things you can make them here. You have people starting to make aluminium. So that should bring the cost down. Plus, where we are right now, again addressing an item that Councillor Sarah mentioned earlier, about storage and about where we are. Before, we used to have storage on what used to be called, you know, lead oxide batteries. Now things have changed. You have lithium ion. The storage capacity of these particular batteries is much more improved. And that's why you're going electric very easily, because you have technology has mastered how we are actually storing the energy. So you can have cars, you can have bikes, you can have, you know, and that's something that we're going to be pushing very much as Nexus Green, that we go green, we push for electric bikes, and we're working with many partners in this country to actually try and push that, because we believe ultimately the technology is there. Now, how do you ensure that you provide quality but at the right cost? And that is by actually determining what their demand is and being able to address the demand precisely for that, and not just producing foie, as people
as they say.
As they say.
A follow-up. How far with the plans for establishing or finalizing on the assembling plant?
So it will be up in Q1 next year. Q1 2023, we should be producing. Quarter one 2023, we should be producing the first solar panel.
That is June to September?
No. Q1 of the year.
January to March.
January to March.
January to March.
Yeah. So end of March there, you should have the first solar panels.
I was hoping January so that my colleague from Alui can be concerned that I told the minister they should bring it as a stopgap.
to manage the expectation.
Honorable Nankabirwa can guide us, but in terms of our financial year, Q1 is usually June, July.
He's talking about the calendar year.
I'm talking about the calendar year.
You're talking about the calendar year.
Yeah.
Okay, me, I was counting in terms of the financial year,
Okay.
which would be July, August and September. Okay, that's fine, because we need to hold you accountable as well. Okay. There is no running away.
They can't. I'm here for
because
the long
this is Council Mercy and Honorable Mapenduzi are not happy, so they must be, their people must be made to have some hope.
But Charles, I think as they look at that projection, we also need to start talking about the aspect of quality now.
Yeah, and that's why it's taking that time.
Yeah,
and that's
why we have seen, I'm sure Honorable Minister could have received this information. A lot of money was sunk by government in ensuring that, you know, solar street lights are put in so many of these urban centers, the municipalities and cities. But 6 months down the road, they have collapsed. We have been round the municipalities. Yeah, under USMIT, yes.
USMIT.
Under USMIT, government made sure those municipalities, you know, install solar street lights.
Yes.
But the quality, they have collapsed about 70%. They're not working. Just 6 months after installation. So I think we need to start talking to you about quality.
And I want you to hold me, I need you to hold me accountable for the quality. And that's why when Council Mercy said, why don't you make it January, I said no. Why? Because when I'm setting up the factory, I have the solar panel that I'm going to produce. The process of certification of this solar panel has already begun. There's a company called TUV in Germany, which, you know, there are a few companies that do this, and it's a 6 months process. There's no shortcuts to that, because they need to be sure that the solar panel I'm producing, and that'll be checked every time I'm doing this. So that's the part that we're actually doing. So apart from the actual construction of the factory and everything, there's the whole certification process, which is not a short one. I need to go and I want Honorable Mapinduzi to say, okay, look, I bought this solar panel from Nexus Green and it is not working. Then I say, okay, hold me accountable. Yeah. Okay.
Honorable, some of the questions were, the majority actually of the questions were directed at you. Respond to them.
I will do omnibus for some.
Yeah.
Because they were targeting West Nile.
You can see the interest. Today all of them are watching.
That tells you there is a saying in law that some of these sayings, people should excuse me for the language, but they say when you have a running stomach, you open the doors yourself. Nobody else will open the doors for you when you have a running stomach. Now, if it is the people of West Nile, mainly, and the Gulu, asking you the questions, Honorable, then they have a running stomach as far as power is concerned.
It's no longer running, it's just flowing.
Now, but for you as a minister of Uganda, you can tackle the issue generally.
First of all, genuinely and frankly speaking, I feel for the people of West Nile. I enjoy challenges when I'm giving service, because when I overcome those challenges, then I become a star performer. This is how I've been doing. Where it hurts most is where I put my energies. And I visited, West Nile was the first place for me to visit. And I want to repeat the statement I've been making in Parliament and before media, that I am committed. I am apportioning time, good time, to solve the problem of power in West Nile. So all of those who asked me questions at whether West Nile is part of Uganda, it's because of the pain that they have. So I should not answer that, because obviously the answer is known, West Nile is part of Uganda. But the pain that the people of West Nile have. And when I talk about the steady progress from the infrastructure that we are establishing, I mean it. If you don't have the transmission lines, those pylons that have crossed Karuma, I mean not Karuma, but the bridge, Pakwach Bridge.
Pakwach.
Beyond Pakwach, there are pylons. I inspected them at the ground level. I went through the line. I think it was KEC company which was doing that line. I'm not quite sure. But I went to the bush with members of parliament from West Nile. So the pylons are beyond Pakwach. So we are making sure that we establish the infrastructure. As to what is on the ground between Electromax and Wonoreko, I presented my paper on the reforms in cabinet. It was passed and the cabinet minutes are at my table for implementation. We are going to deal with that relationship, which is not good, between Wonoreko and Electromax. We tried to look around to get fuel so that Electromax gets fuel. We know the status of Electromax. They don't have money. Government has to get money and buy fuel. That could be the, you know, the immediate intervention. But all our budgets were cut due to COVID, 40%. For my budget to be cut 40%, really. So it has affected our performance. We pray that we stabilize and the pandemic goes so that we can do the normal appropriation. My colleague will bear me out. So connection to DRC, and then you sell power there. We have, again, we have to be strategic. We have what we call the East African Power Pool, comprised of 11 countries. We have to get money from this resource called electricity. This money we get can help us to construct a distribution line somewhere else. This money we get can help us to pay the loan which we borrowed to generate electricity. So South Sudan, they are our neighbors. We do business there, and it is part of the East African Power Pool. So because of that network, we agreed to work together. Even Ethiopia. Time will come, God forbid, when one of your generation plant has gotten a problem and you are now relying on South Sudan to reverse now. You use the power which you are taking from South Sudan. So people are just request that you stay calm, don't get annoyed, don't react like I saw some people who reacted by cutting down the poles because there were no wires.
Where?
Part of this country.
Yes, honorable.
Where is the electricity? The poles were down. And now we need power.
And so you can easily bring power, then they don't have poles.
And they don't have poles. Unused power annoys people. But if we explain fully, they will understand that it takes like 10 years to get a power plant and 2-3 years to construct a distribution line. So tomorrow, if we happen to connect power to the industrial parks, and this power we are saying is unutilized, there will be no more. 400 megawatts. The moment we connect, and then when you realize you need more power, by the time you begin now negotiating with the developer, to take another 10 years. That's why we are advertising Ayago of 840 megawatts, Kiba of 400 megawatts, Ryong of 392 megawatts right now. And the people will call me mad. You have power you are not utilizing, again you are advertising for more generation. Because I know the moment I'm given money enough to connect power, this suppressed consumption will be no more. People will consume power. The cost of power, true, is high because we borrow money expensively. And the money that we put in generation contributes 60% of the cost of electricity, 60%. That's why Karuma and Isimba, where we put in money, 15%, the power that is generated from there is cheaper, less than 5 cents. It's 4.9 cents because we contributed. But where we have not contributed, like Bujagali, and the cost becomes very high. Somebody said that at this time, why would you increase the tariff? Really, you don't feel for people.
Yes, because it's power coming from Ukraine.
No, it's not coming from Ukraine. But we operate in dollars. Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, which has been the bulk purchaser of has been the monopoly, purchasing power in bulk and then selling it, until recently when we changed the law. When the inflation, for example, when the shilling depreciates.
That's Umeme or the distribution company?
UETCL
Transmission.
Is affected. Is affected.
Transmission.
By the transmission.
They buy power in dollars.
Transmission transacts in dollars. Yes.
Okay.
That's why you hear 5 US cents. You know? So whenever there is inflation, we feel it. These are economies of scale. Whenever there is inflation, we feel it. Why do you think that the cost of power will remain constant even when every other thing, the price has raised? Why do you think this commodity called electricity, for it, the cost will remain constant?
No. I think, Honorable,
we've been affected, and the small increment is caused because of what is happening.
Yeah, Honorable, with the permission of the moderator, I think the mindset of a citizen is to say that these are essential services, where even if there was an increment, it should be borne by government.
Who is government?
Protect the citizen.
Who is government? Where does government get money from?
Consolidated fund.
Where does government get money?
It comes from the citizen.
Yes. So should government increase taxes so that we get money to have a subsidy? For me to have a subsidy, it will still end up on me.
Okay.
The cost will end up on me, the consumer.
Yeah.
Because if government does not have money,
Tail transfer.
You know, you just say we increase so that we get money. It's like telling me now reduce the electricity from whatever to 5 cents. And yet you've been telling me collect money through the tariff and pay for ABCD. If I reduce, especially in the middle of the budget, I'll have a shortfall. UTCL has had a shortfall of 45 billion. Automatically. And yet we collect that money and we are able to run without asking money from the budget.
Okay.
Okay? So we are affected. The tariff is affected. Like if fuel goes up and everything else goes up, likewise, we are affected in our operations.
Okay. Honorable, I know we have hit the time. It's midnight.
Thank you so much, but
someone has asked, kindly remind Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa that the Ministry of Energy did not make public the concessionary agreement with the Wenreco. Was that so?
Well, at the beginning, yeah, but
I thought eventually it was...
we handed over every requirement that we were asked to Parliament.
Okay.
Where do we find public now? Are we going to place on the boards of all town councils let them ask their members of parliament. Every document was submitted to parliament.
Okay.
I am pleased to hear from Honorable Mapenduzi that the problem of the digital lights can be comes from old poles, and therefore if we replace the old poles quickly, the problem will go. I'm going to investigate this.
Yeah.
Nobody has told me,
concrete poles,
because we've been talking about evacuating power from Achua and also working on this substation, Kole. That would solve the problem of Gulu. But if you are now telling me that really it's because of all the poles,
well,
I am going.
That's one of them.
I am going to look into it. It sounded so simple that we are seen as people who don't care. What do I benefit if Gulu is in darkness?
Okay.
Nothing.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Very good discussion, and I want to appreciate you. Unfortunately, even the good dance, we have to now close it. I'm appealing to you that when you take a trip across the country, we invite you and we expound on these discussions and test or review how much mileage you will have made in trying to resolve some of these problems. But we pray that you work with partners like the solar providers to ensure that you cover some of these gaps, so that some of these people can also partake of the 60 years of independence.
Debt-GDP ratio. Debt-GDP ratio is something that stops me from working with everybody, because there is a capping. These people are not your uncles. They have come here to do business.
To make money.
To make money.
Thank you.
So I am curtailed by that capping.
Yeah.
Yes, people should know this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Engineer Morris Barije, for coming to share your knowledge with us, and we will appreciate you coming back again if you can from Nexus Green.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Council Mundoro Masi, and continue the advocacy. Now, the other time you took to the Minister of State. Now, find time and slip more copies to the Minister herself.
That time she had traveled.
The other time you could not meet her. Now give her also. Find time now after the show and
UBC
give her
has given me free space.
the more original copy. Thank you very much, Honorable Mapenduzi, and thanks a lot, Councillor Sarah. Robert Ejiku, thanks for watching. Robert Ejiku has slipped in his own message. He says, the West Nile Foundation for Education, the Education Trust Fund, we are going to have our annual dinner on October 28th. And the tickets are on sale. And he says the tickets are on sale. Ejiku, we are going to charge you. He says the individual is 100,000 shillings. Corporate table is 1.5 million, and table of 10 is. He mentions the price. Table of 10 is the one which is 1.5 million, and that the dinner will be at Golf Course Hotel, Kampala, on the 28th of October. This is about West Nile Foundation and West Nile Education Trust Fund, that they're doing a fundraiser to support needy students study science. And so Science Week is also coming around the corner in the next, I think it is on the 6th, starting on the 6th of November. So we are talking science and how science can contribute to socio-economic transformation of Uganda. Very important. We are looking forward to having that discussion as well shortly. I want to thank you all very much, especially those who participated through viewing this program through more especially those who sent in their thoughts, their sharing with us their own concerns, and the message has been delivered. We now pray and hope that the responsible government and public officials take the right steps to implement all that needs to be done to solve the problem. Otherwise, thank you very much, and God bless you all. Ebola is still with us, COVID is still with us, especially the trouble with Ebola right now. Some places in our country have been closed out to public interactions, especially transport, especially Mubende. So do take care and ensure that you wash your hands with the water and soap, and avoid unnecessary hugs and interactions, close body interactions with the people that you, especially people you don't know where they have come from, to protect yourself and protect your loved ones. So bye-bye. Have a good night and God bless you all.